this session, we're going to take a look at improving or enhancing process tracking by utilizing the Sysmon utility from sysinternal. So if you want to take process tracking to the next level and gain additional insights into network activity from your processes, then you can do that with the Sysmon. Just as a recap, with process tracking, you can see all process activity, including who started a process, how long was that process active, along with other details, such as the command line, for example, of the process, checksum of the process, and whether that process ran elevated or not. But with Sysmon, we can also see network activity, which can be very useful for forensics, as well as troubleshooting and security reasons, of course. The first thing you'll have to do to utilize Sysmon is activate this capability in EventSentry. So once you're in your process tracking object, simply click on the Sysmon network events, check that box, and now EventSentry will be looking for these events. But of course, you'll also have to install Sysmon so that the underlying data, the underlying events are generated that EventSentry relies upon. I already opened up a command prompt here, and I already downloaded Sysmon from the sysinternal's websites. The links are all in the documentation, or you can simply Google Sysmon. And we're going to install it using the predefined configuration file that ships with EventSentry. So if we do a quick listing here, we'll see that there's, well, 3 versions of Sysmon. We're going to go with the Sysmon 64. We're going to accept the EULA already. We're going to install it, and we're going to point it to the EventSentry installation directory, to the sysmon.conf configuration file. And here's the output. Basically, it tells us that the schema of this configuration file is a couple of subversions behind, but that it installed Sysmon 64, it started, and that it's running. This configuration file ships with 5.1 by default, but you can also download the latest version from our GitHub page. So if you go to EventSentry.com and go to our GitHub page, in the configuration section there, you can find the sysmon.conf file. You can download it straight from here by clicking on it and then clicking on the download link here. Now, generally speaking, you do not have to restart a computer once you install Sysmon, but in some cases you do have to do that in order for these specific events that pertain to network connections are logged. And it's event ID 3 that Sysmon logs when a process initiates a network connection. So let's take a look at the application and services logs. We should see the Sysmon event log here. And here it is. If you don't see it right away, you may have to restart the management console. And here we have a number of events that are being logged by Sysmon already. So we just installed it, but we already have a wealth of data here. And predominantly, we can see those event ID 3, which is the network connection detected. So if we just double click that here, we'll see what's being logged here. And here we have the svchouse.exe process opening up a UDP connection to a broadcast address. Take a look at this one here. Here we have a UDP DNS connection, seemingly, to a domain controller. Now, where can we see this in EventSentry? So if we go to Features, Sysmon now, we have some Sysmon data already. And again, this looks similar to what we've seen in other dialogues. We can see the source hosts here. We can see the source IPs. We can see all the processes that have been initiating network connections so far. So it's not a whole lot since we just started it. And by the way, if you do not see information here right away, you may have to restart the EventSentry agent. Since that event log that Sysmon creates does not exist when the agent started, in some cases, it's necessary to restart the EventSentry agent service if you don't see data in here. Now, if we go here and we'll just go to some test websites, maybe here the BBC. We can refresh this. And at that point now we have data from Firefox here, for example. So we can click that now, restrict all information to Firefox. And we can see the actual entries that have been generated. We can increase the number of results per page. 100 is not actually enough, but we can also see which protocols have been used, mostly TCP. We can see destination hosts and IP addresses. We can also adjust the columns to make some more room here. We can say, okay, we don't really care about the source port. And close this. Expand this column a little bit here. And here we can investigate, and we can see that just open up this web page created a lot of traffic in the background. And we can also filter this out. So if we go back to the summary, we can see that there's some UDP traffic. If we say we don't care about that, we just care about TCP traffic, for example. We can also simply look at the destination hosts here. So a lot of stuff going to CloudFront here, to Amazon, Akamai, and Google, of course. And again, by looking at the details here, we can see everything, every connection. For example, connections to port 80 instead of 443, for example. And that's how easy it is to utilize Sysmon. If you want to install Sysmon on multiple hosts, you can, of course, go the manual process that I've outlined here. It is fairly fast to do this, but you still have to copy Sysmon, of course, to those computers and run that command. We also have a KB article that shows how to deploy Sysmon on multiple hosts. So if you go to our knowledge base, just type in Sysmon, and then here you have a document that outlines how you can actually deploy Sysmon using EventSentry's application scheduler. So this is something that's going to take a little bit of time, this article, a little bit of setup. So this really only makes sense if you're doing a large-scale deployment of Sysmon with, I would say, 10, 20, 30 more hosts. Otherwise, I would just go the manual route and install Sysmon via the command line.